And here we are.
We are live.
We are live.
So get the next shot ready.
Hello, everybody. It's Thursday night, and we're back.
We're back.
So we weren't here last Thursday, obviously, and I guess we didn't.
I did not post anything.
Notify anybody, or we didn't post anything.
Well, we told them the week before we
yeah.
weren't going to be here. But
So here's the deal. So we were supposed to be going to Hawaii for our 30th wedding anniversary, but then there was a family health emergency, and so we did not go to Hawaii. So we stayed here in LA to address that emergency, which has fortunately come to pass in a positive outcome. And so we're back here, and we're glad to be back and to see you all. So it looks like the Hoyts, or Lori Hoyt's on board. So
Carolyn.
Good evening, Lori. Carolyn's on board.
Polly
Thank you for
is
joining
watching.
us.
It said on
Polly's
my phone.
watching us.
Hi, Polly.
So,
good to see you.
So thank you one and all for joining us. And thank you for your prayers, and thank you for your support and encouragement. And we're back, and we are going to be jumping into Exodus chapter 18.
18.
Oh, well, thank you, Polly.
Thank
yeah,
you.
it was our 30th. Yeah, our 30th anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
It was our 30th.
we have Miss Catherine from Texas, and we have Angie from Ohio. So thank you both for joining us tonight.
Push that down so it's not in front of
Right.
what I'm trying to see.
So yeah, we got all kinds of things going on tonight.
Too many
so.
wires.
Too many
Catherine,
wires, but we're back.
Angie.
We're back, and we're excited to be back.
Yeah,
here.
Brian just said he tried the live. I know. I'm looking at the live.exclaim.org screen, and it has a question mark over there. So sorry about that. I'm not sure.
Not sure why.
Why
'cause
the
it
stream
was
isn't coming through
streaming.
to that. So
Yeah.
we'll take a picture of that and tell our producer.
Right. It was streaming earlier. It streams 24/7.
Well, right,
most
but
of
it
the
didn't break to
But
our
it didn't-
study. Our
it
stream
didn't-
is not showing up. So
Right.
we can
So
tell our producer about that.
so sorry
know.
about that.
It looked like it was set to go. It says Bible study with Pastor Dan and Gay, but
Yeah.
maybe I could
Technical
try to.
difficulties. Technical difficulties.
Let me try to log
so
it back in or something. Let me
But,
see what happens if
yeah.
I do that.
Yep.
It's not that big a deal.
We'll try it. So,
Not hard.
But anyway, we are glad to be back,
I
and
don't think that'll make much
gonna
difference.
try and load us up onto the exclaimed streaming
Yeah,
page. But
I don't.
but again,
that's all I can
while-
do is like reboot. I don't know how it works. So
While she's working on that end, we are going to get ready to go ahead and jump into our study of Exodus. And let me go ahead and put the next screen up. Darn it. There we go. All right. There we are. So, ta-da. Okay. So as you'll recall, it's been 2 weeks. So if you'll recall that in Exodus 17, two major things happened.
Stan's watching. Hey, Stan.
Stan. Oh, Stan.
And Robin.
Thanks
Hi,
for joining.
Robin.
Hi, Robin. Thank you for joining us. So good to see
I'm
you.
seeing you guys on my phone, so
Yeah.
that's why we have 7 screens altogether. On
Yeah.
our
So
phones.
so that's
So
why.
that's why we have it, because it shows me things on one
Right.
faster than on the other one.
There we go.
So.
So you'll recall that in Exodus chapter 17, two significant events are recorded. One is that God miraculously supplies water to the Israelites in the middle of the desert, and he has Moses strike a rock. And that's significant because that a similar event will occur down the road here, and we'll see that Moses violates God's instructions, and it has serious consequences. But in this point in the narrative, God instructs Moses to strike the rock, and water flows from the rocks and supplies water for a significant amount of time to the people of the Exodus, which we've said many times numbered possibly as many as 3 million people. But it was a significant amount of water to supply water needs for a significant amount of people and their livestock. So it looks like Lori had dental surgery and she's asking for prayer. So we will indeed be praying for you, Lori. Dental extractions can be quite painful. So take care of that and recover soon, and we will be praying with you and for you. So now, the second event, I should say, the second event that occurred and is recorded in chapter 17 was the unprovoked attack of the Amalekites. And I think what I'm going to do is just go ahead and put this map up there, and just as a way of review. So on our map, if you can see that, oh, look at that, there's my arrow. So right around the middle, about the 6 o'clock position on your map there, is approximately the area that the people of the Exodus are occupying, if you will, at this point in their history. So Rephidim and later on, the Amalekite territory would be up around the 2 o'clock position, if you will. Up in sort of in that area would be the territory that would become known as the land of the Amalekites. But at this point in history, the Amalekites have come down, they have attacked the Israelites unprovoked, and by God's divine intervention, the Israelites thoroughly rout the Amalekites. And you'll recall that Moses was to keep his hands upraised during this time.
So you know they can't see you right now?
So, yeah.
You want me to switch it back?
Yeah, switch back.
Okay. Now
So
they can see
I'm
you.
making all kinds of gestures
I'm like,
here.
you know they can't see you, right?
And Gay's reminding me that
You
you can't
switched
see
it.
me. You can't see me.
You switched it to the full screen, right?
My articulation.
You start gesturing, that's all. I think you want us to move back to the split screen.
Yep. That's why Gay sits here next to me. Okay, okay.
Technical person.
Because
Sort of.
I'm gesticulating and she's like, they can't see you. So, okay. So anyway.
I'm enjoying the hand motions, but I'm not looking at you either.
So
I'm looking out there.
she's amused. Okay. Anyway, so Moses was to keep his hands upraised. We're not sure the position, but this is a traditional position. Naturally, you can't do this for very long. So then his brother Aaron and who may have been his brother-in-law, come beside him, and they support his arms so he can keep them outstretched, and that sign of obedience. Again, there's nothing magic about his arms. It was the obedience that was what was required of him. Through that, the Israelites win the war. So, or win the battle.
Win the
They win the
battle.
battle, right? And they thoroughly rout the Amalekites.
The Amalekites.
So then, now we are going to roll into chapter 18. You ready, Doc?
Sure.
Still don't know why we're not getting anything on the exclaimed live dots or the exclaimed live stream. We'll keep working on it, and but we're going to go ahead.
Well,
and
it'll
we're gonna-
have to get fixed by Pastor Paul
Yeah,
for next
so-
week. So,
we're going to move forward.
Producer Pastor Paul. So if you know anyone who's trying to find us there on live.exclaim, just see if they can log on to Facebook or our YouTube channel, which I did put the link to that also in
Yeah.
my post earlier. That's the Foundations in Creation / 242 Ministries.
Right.
That's
So
our
we've
YouTube
got-
channel, and it is streaming live there as well. So for people who don't want to watch on Facebook
Right.
for
So we
whatever
have
reason.
3 ways to watch the study tonight, and we appreciate everybody who
thank
watches.
you guys.
So
For
here we
joining us.
go. Chapter 18 of Exodus, starting in verse 1.
Verse 1, Now Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard about everything that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt.
So word is getting around. So these former slaves that are wandering around, seemingly wandering around aimlessly in the desert, God is doing amazing things, miraculous things in them and through them, and providing for their needs. And undoubtedly, the accounts of the pillar of cloud and fire and the water and the miraculous distribution of manna, all of these things it's getting out there. It's getting out there, and so now Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, who we haven't heard about for a significant amount of time, right? Jethro hears about this, and he's coming to pay Moses a visit. Okay, and again, recall that Jethro isn't just some shepherd dude wandering around in the desert. Okay, he was indeed a shepherd, but he wasn't just. That's not all he was. By all accounts, Jethro is recorded in the Bible as being a priest.
Right.
Okay, he was considered the priest of Midian, the region of Midian. Some people say he had multiple names. His multiple names are used. Some people think that one of his names may have been a title. Ruel, I think it was, right?
Right, that's one of the other names.
Yeah.
So I wasn't clear if Jethro was the title or Ruel was the title, but
Right.
both of those terms refer to this individual.
To this particular
So-
individual.
Right.
So what we do know is that Jethro was likely, and more than likely, he was almost certainly a descendant of one of Abraham's other children through his second wife, Keturah. Okay, remember, after Sarah died, Abraham remarried a woman named Keturah and had multiple children with her.
Right.
Okay, and because of this connection, many commentators, there is so much verbiage about this guy Jethro. There is so much written about him, and there's just these academic arguments about was he a polytheist? Was he a worshiper of Yahweh? Was Yahweh just one of the many gods that he served? What was his spin on all this? But everything that we read about, and we're going to read about here, indicates that he knew God.
Right. And
He knew God
knew
and he
Yahweh,
worshiped him.
Jehovah, the God of the Bible, that we're talking about.
So
Yeah.
Guzik says, we have good reason to believe he was a true priest of God and worshipped God, the same God that Moses knew. So, but boy, pick up some commentaries and it is all over the map. And it's kind of interesting because the Bible is pretty succinct and clear about that. So,
Yes.
and again, just for reference point, Midian would be over there at about the 4 or 5 o'clock position. It's a region, and it's encircled in I guess that's red. Okay.
Yeah, it's red.
It's red. Okay, it's encircled in red, and so and Moses spent a significant amount of time there, 40 years, tending to the flocks of Jethro, and of course, his wife. He met his wife there, and he lived there for a significant amount of time. So now word gets back. So now Jethro and his a significant entourage, if you will, make the journey there to visit, to see what's going on. Okay, verse 2.
And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took in Moses' wife Zipporah after he had sent her away.
Now this sounds a little bit strange to us because it's like, well, it's his daughter. Why wouldn't he take her in? But understand that the cultural norms of the time would be when a woman was given in marriage to that she would become the husband's family, and it's almost like her biological family didn't have the same responsibilities to her as.
There's no going back. Once you
Yeah.
got married, you were out.
More or less.
Basically.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, there was no,
So
there was no responsibility or obligation for her to be able to go back home by her mother and father.
right. So this is an act of generosity, but it also is a portrayal of Jethro's character. Okay, and again, she had left during the time of the Passover and such. I think it was shortly thereafter.
You know what? Everybody I heard or listened to, it is not clearly stated when
Yeah.
she left Moses. Like, she traveled with him to Egypt.
Yeah.
Her and the boys.
Yeah.
Traveled with him to Egypt, but it's actually not recorded at what point that he sent her back.
And he sent her away ostensibly to protect her and the children.
Well, and so that's a theory.
Yeah.
Because it's not stated when he sent her back. It's just stating here that she was sent back earlier. Because
Yeah.
in the NLT it says in verse 2, earlier Moses had sent his wife Zipporah and his 2 sons back to Jethro, who had taken them in.
Right.
That's the way it's phrased, so it's a little easier to understand. But that this point is when we're learning that they were sent away.
Yeah.
There's no notation about when that happened. So one of the theories is, he sent her away, to protect them because he knew God was going to be doing something crazy to, get the Israelites to be freed from the Egyptians.
Right.
However, another theory I heard was that but why would he not want them to see firsthand how God's going to provide for and free the Israelites? So, so it's also a theory that they were sent away. Even maybe they were sent. One theory I heard was maybe they were sent like after the Israelites were freed and had crossed the Red Sea. Maybe, he sent Zipporah and the boys back as actually to tell Jethro, like, hey, this is what happened, and this is where we're at. And then Jethro came back to talk to Moses, because when Moses was there in Midian for 40 years, and Jethro is recorded as a priest who worshiped God of the Bible, the true God. So, he and Moses had 40 years actually of talking about God, and I'm sure they offered sacrifices to the Lord. They worshiped the Lord together. So now Jethro is coming back, bringing Moses' family back to him, but also coming back to celebrate what God has done.
Right.
Because they are, united in their worship of Yahweh. So, but none of that's actually like stated clearly as far as when they were sent away. All we know is like, it looks like they were sent away, but we don't know when, and we don't really know why. Right. But the one thought was like, well, like they could take the news back faster.
True.
Because it says, he heard about everything, and then it says, he's bringing them back. Well, maybe that's how he heard.
Possibly.
Was that Zipporah and the boys, and probably some other people for protection, traveled there to tell Jethro about what had happened.
Yeah.
So
it's a viable theory. We don't know, but it doesn't negate what we've read so far, and it doesn't diminish what we've read so far.
Yeah, all we know is they went away, and now they're coming back with Jethro, and Jethro is a priest who does worship Yahweh, and he is a descendant. That is in texts of Scripture elsewhere, that he's a descendant of Abraham from his second wife Keturah. So
right, and also not only did Jethro bring back Zipporah, but verse 3 gives us slightly more details.
Right, the 2 sons, verse 3, and her 2 sons, Zipporah's sons it's referring to, one of whom was named Gershom, for Moses said, I have been a stranger in a foreign land, and the other was named Eliezer, for he said, the God of my father was my help, and he saved me from the sword of Pharaoh.
So, and several commentators have noticed that Gershom is sort of a pessimistic name. I'm a stranger in a foreign land, whereas Eleazar is a if you will, a more positive name. Was the God of my father was my help.
Right.
And so one commentator said that this is the first and only mention of Moses' second son, Eleazar, whose very name suggests a rekindling of faith in Moses' heart, compared with the despair shown in the name Gershom. So we can see that, and we've read of this already, that Moses had a major renewing, rekindling, resparking of his faith, just by seeing God do amazing things all around him, undeniable things. So very cool. So verse 5.
Verse 5, then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness, where he was camped at the mountain of God. And he sent word to Moses, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons. Again,
recognizing that in the ancient texts that punctuation and such didn't exist the way it does today. So by stating it twice in slightly different way, it's emphasizing it. Jethro came. He sent word ahead, I'm coming. and I'm bringing your wife and your sons with you, and I'm coming to you. And it's interesting because it's clearly stated that Jethro was Moses' father-in-law, and so there's been some debate because several names are used for the same individual. There's been a little bit of debate. Was Jethro really his father-in-law? Well, the text is pretty clear. It says, your father-in-law's coming. Your father-in-law's coming, okay? And he's bringing your wife and your 2 sons with you. So, but look what happens. Watch what happens. You ready, Doc?
Mm-hmm.
Verse 7.
Then Moses went out to meet his father-in-law, and he bowed down and kissed him, and they asked each other about their welfare and went into the tent.
This verse here, this is the epitome of Near Eastern hospitality. Moses gets word that his father-in-law is coming. He goes out to meet him. Okay, he bows to him, bows down before him. He kisses him. They ask about each other. They catch up with each other, and then going into the tent that's the kind of the ultimate sign of hospitality. Moses is inviting Jethro into his personal space so that they can rejoice and catch up and exchange pleasantries, and it's a symbol of sincere and beloved hospitality.
Right. It's one thing to stand in the parking lot and keep talking
Yeah.
near the camels, but it's another thing to go inside someone's house.
Right,
You know,
right.
to go from the parking lot or the driveway, all the way in. Like, then you're like all in, and
Right.
you're being invited that much, a next level in of intimacy.
Right. And again, it
And
reminds
trust.
us of the story that's recorded in the New Testament of the goods or of the prodigal son, right? When the father hears or sees the son coming, he runs to him. He throws his clothing or his cloak on him, and he brings him into the house. You're welcome. You are my family, and we're not just having a business transaction here. You are family,
Right.
and yeah. So
Right.
that's a lovely picture.
Lovely picture.
So,
I was looking up because the 2 names of Moses' sons, the one about was a stranger in a strange land. I mean, it's making my brain think about there's earlier in Genesis, somebody's child is named similarly. And I was trying to think someone else had
yeah.
2 sons and they named them this and that. I'm thinking it was Joseph, but Joseph had Ephraim, and Ephraim means forgetfulness. Like, I want to forget or fruitfulness. And Manasseh means forgetfulness.
Yeah.
So he named one son for, like, I want to forget what I came from, and then God has made me fruitful. So that was just clicking in my brain because it was somewhat similar, like a little bit, that the one son means God provided for me.
Perhaps.
And
Yeah,
that's
I don't recall.
Moses' son.
Yeah.
The second one means God provided for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was my help.
He
Yeah.
helped me. He saved me from the sword of Pharaoh.
Yeah.
So that was Moses giving God credit for saving him. Like, when he went to Midian, so both these boys were already born, like, before God freed the Israelites from that Pharaoh. But he's referring, when he named his son, he's referring to when he killed the Egyptian and fled to Midian at the beginning of his 40 years in Midian. That's what he's naming his son in commemoration of, how God protected him. He escaped without being killed for murdering the Egyptian that he murdered, right? That's all. And so that's similar because Joseph said he was naming one child for God helping him be fruitful.
Right.
Yeah.
So the commentator Guzik, as did many commentators, they make note that Moses had a special relationship with Jethro. And I chose this comment because the way Guzik puts it, even though he, Moses, was raised in all the wisdom and education of Egypt, Moses perhaps learned more about real leadership from the priest and shepherd Jethro, whose flocks he tended until he was called back to Egypt. Okay, and this is a significant point because we're going to reflect on this throughout this chapter. This chapter is so beautiful because it truly reflects the struggles and the trials of actual leadership, and we get to see a biblical model for what true leadership really is, and it's so beautiful. It's so magnificent.
For what healthy leadership
leadership is. It's such a fascinating and interesting study. So, verse 8.
Moses told his father-in-law everything that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardships that had confronted them on the journey, and how the Lord had rescued them. And Jethro rejoiced over all the goodness which the Lord had done for Israel in rescuing them from the hand of the Egyptians.
So this was not a short conversation. You can imagine that this conversation went on for hours, and Moses is telling, what's happened over the last, the plagues and the Passover and the confrontation with Pharaoh and the parting of the Red Sea and manna, and all of these things this was just this. Wouldn't you love to have been a fly on the wall of that tent, just listening into this conversation? And it says, and Jethro he's just rejoicing. He's just like, this is so cool. This is so cool. Mm-hmm. And he's rejoicing. And we'll learn here he's praising and praying and just so overjoyed. This is magnificent. He's sharing in the joy that of what's happening to the Israelite people and what has happened to the Israelite people.
Right, and the way it's stated to me makes it more likely that Jethro, again, is a current believer in Jehovah God, Yahweh,
right.
Because he's rejoicing with him. He's not saying things that are like, oh, wow, my gods could never have done that, or he's not surprised, he's not like, oh, wow, he's just rejoicing, and thanking the Lord.
Right, and here we see this wonderful picture of Jethro. He's a priest. I mean, he's a priest, and he's a man of authority and power, and yet at the same time, he is able to fully embrace and rejoice at the good fortune that Moses is sharing with him. And so we have a wonderful picture of a true grounded leader right here, is that he recognizes the hand of God, and he's, like Gay said, he's not jealous or competitive. He's rejoicing,
and he's not ignorant.
Right.
The other thing, he's like,
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. How could a God do that? So it just shows that they had a belief in Yahweh in common. That was part of what their relationship for the previous 40 years, was.
Now the next set of verses, it's interesting because some commentators, they kind of stumble over this and they say, well, after reading these two verses, 10 and 11, maybe Jethro was polytheist. Maybe he wasn't like completely sold out on God and stuff like that. I don't see that at all.
I know. And then we have this big, thick, not kidding you, it's 3-inch thick, wonderful commentary on the book of Exodus by Riken. But he spends several pages talking about this being Jethro's conversion. I don't believe it. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I disagree with that. So this is why we'll tell you. Okay, verse 10. So Jethro said, "Blessed be the Lord who rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians and from the hand of Pharaoh, and who rescued the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all the gods. Indeed, it was proven when they acted insolently against the people."
So some of the commentators have said, see, he mentions that, oh, Yahweh, the God of Moses, is greater. So it's now I know, but I think that's reading a lot into it. I read this, Gay reads this, and we see this is not now I know, like, oh, now I'm convinced. Oh,
Right.
gee, I wasn't convinced before, but now it's just like, this is like, yes.
Like now
yes!
we know, like
Right.
we know that we know, basically, and just because, I say, oh, thank you, Lord, for saving me today. That doesn't mean I wasn't saved yesterday.
Right,
It just
right.
means I am freshly acknowledging that God is my salvation. But it doesn't mean I wasn't a believer all those other days and years and months, So, because I
Exactly.
think the previous verses tell us a lot about Jethro, and
Yeah.
then we talked earlier about how earlier on in Exodus when they were traveling to Egypt, how Moses had not circumcised his son Gershom,
Oh, yeah.
and how Zipporah, his wife, did it for him. It's in Exodus chapter 2 or 4 or something
She
like
got
that.
pretty ticked at
So
Moses.
she was she did it. I mean, actually, it's not really clear if she was like angry or but she went ahead and did it. But because Moses had fallen ill, because God was punishing him, she felt God was punishing him because he hadn't circumcised their son. So Zipporah performed the circumcision. So how would she, if she was from a pagan family and culture that had nothing to do with Yahweh and Abraham, and I mean, circumcision is the covenant that God made with Abraham, and all the Israelites from that time on have been circumcised,
Right.
because God commanded them to. So Zipporah, so it proves that Jethro is a descendant of Abraham, but it also proves that she was familiar
Right.
and knew what was right in Yahweh's eyes,
Right.
and she went ahead and did it. So that's why to us, it's very unlikely that this is the point where Jethro is converted to believing in Yahweh, because that all happened way before, God had freed the Israelites.
Right.
So I like how the NLT just says this verse 10 and 11 a little clearer, but it says, "Praise the Lord," Jethro said, "for he has rescued you from the Egyptians, from Pharaoh. Yes, he has rescued Israel from the powerful hand of Egypt. I know now that the Lord is greater than all other gods, because he rescued his people from the oppression of the proud Egyptians."
Okay.
So
yeah.
it says I know now instead of now I know. But that phrase can still in English mean sort of the same thing.
Right,
But I just
right.
think it's interesting they changed the order of the words there.
Yeah.
But this whole, like, that phrase, now I know, or I know now, it reminds me of that song, you never failed me yet.
yeah.
The popular song that came
Right.
out, and it says, and there's a lot of churches, and I don't disagree with them. I actually I see the point where there's some worship leaders and churches that say, I love that song, but don't sing the word yet, because we know that God will never fail us.
Right.
You've never failed me yet is how that song is written. And a lot of people sing it and they just leave off the word yet. But I can see like that if the person who wrote it is singing as a newer believer, like if you haven't lived that much life yet as a Christian, say you've only lived 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, like all they are saying is God has never failed me yet. But I don't think their intention was to say, put the seed of doubt in everyone's mind that he might fail you sometime.
Right.
They're just saying at this point in time, God's never failed me yet.
He's not
like you say
failed
it
me.
like that. God's never failed me yet, and he's not going to.
Right.
But we know that. But so that's where this phrase is, it's a similar thing.
Yeah.
Like, now I know the Lord is greater than all other gods. That doesn't mean that he didn't know that before. He's just saying for effect or for emphasis,
Right.
we now, right after everything, he's just talking to Moses in the tent, and he's saying, after everything that God has brought you through, now we know that he's greater than all other gods.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they didn't know that
you
before.
can almost see it,
right?
like, we know. You can almost see him like just emphatic, right?
Yeah, it's just like the phrase in that song. It's really, that's what I think. It's a conversational phrase. They're like, now we know. Like, he's like, you bet we know.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's what I think.
What's significant with this is one commentator, he drew out a significant difference. And this commentator, Bloom.
Oh, Marie says, yeah, this is confirmation. Exactly.
This is confirmation.
For Jethro
absolutely.
and for Moses.
Yeah.
I mean, when we share the testimony of what God has done,
Right.
it confirms it for us.
Right.
That's why we are commanded in part to share our testimony. Because, yeah, people on the other end, you cannot determine how they receive it. Will they accept Christ? People have all this fear about, oh, I'm not an evangelist. I can't go talk to people. How they receive it, how they act on it, what happens. But we are commanded.
Informational to the other party, it's to our benefit too, because
Right.
it reminds us of what God did.
There again, we're going to say, thank you, Lord, for saving me. Thank you for saving me. That doesn't mean I wasn't saved yesterday.
You see, the Amalekites were probably equally aware of all the miracles, and they could see the pillar and they could see the cloud. Okay. But the Amalek came to wage war with the Jews even after knowing of the miraculous victory over Egypt. They were intimidated, fearful, jealous, competitive. We don't know what their motivation was, but they hear about what God is doing with this people, and they're like, oh, we got to cut this out. We got to stomp this down. On the opposite hand, Jethro hears about this, and he rejoices. When he heard the information that challenged his philosophy and way of life, this particular commentator thinks that Jethro was a polytheist until this point, so I don't agree with that. But he courageously and joyously acknowledged it and incorporated it into his life. In other words, he celebrated what God was doing, whereas the Amalekites became fearful and said, we got to stomp this out. We got to get rid of this. And Jethro hears it, and he's like, this is awesome.
So Catherine said our video, like the speaking or the audio is going in and out. And I just saw a note. I'm watching it on my phone too. And for a second, it said on Facebook, it said that it was waiting for a stronger signal or something. And now it's back. So I don't know what's happening with that. We have, I think he has Frontier Internet here, although I'm not sure.
I don't know. There's a lot of wires around here.
But we don't know. But I apologize. And what should happen, though, is that the recording, so this is, we're live streaming it, but it will be available on our YouTube channel or right here on Bible Discovery Group.
Right.
If you go down to the guides and find it under Exodus, or just look on my stream. Anyway, you should be able to watch it, and you could just scroll to the part where we cut out, and you could watch the rest. Sorry. But the little words that might be, I know, my phone keeps doing that too. It keeps going in and out when I'm trying to watch a video at home, and it's really frustrating. But might be here, it might be your end, I have no idea. But I'm glad it's better. Okay, let's keep going. Verse 12. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifices for God, and Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat a meal with Moses' father-in-law before God.
So this is a feast. This is not just an intimate dinner. This is a feast with all of the elders of Israel and Aaron, and they're there to celebrate. And again, this isn't just it is a celebratory event, but it's also a bonding event, because all of the elders are coming, and they're saying that that they are in alignment with Jethro, and they're welcoming him, and so this is a very, very significant event.
Right.
And then I love what I failed to note the commentator, but I love what this particular commentator said. I believe this was a Jewish commentator, but I didn't record his or her name. It says, Jethro's demeanor is surely elegant, sincere, and irreproachable. Okay? There's no mistaking that Jethro is a priest and a leader of his people. But this is the part that I love. Notice he's only present when needed. Okay? He comes to bring Moses' wife and son back. Okay, he speaks only when asked. Everything he does without guile, okay, or ulterior motives. He never thinks of taking advantage of his position as first counselor to the great leader of Moses. So he's like, oh, he's my son-in-law, and he doesn't use that to try and get a better table at the restaurant, was all I'm saying, right? It's just a sincere relationship he has with Moses, right? No one would ever accuse him of nepotism, okay, or of like trying to get in good because Moses is his son-in-law, right? And Moses treats him with deference and respect as to kneel before him. If he does that, it's because Jethro earned it. He deserves it. Okay, it's not just a mock deference. It's Moses sincerely respects his father-in-law, and his father-in-law. Everything that we read about him in the Bible indicates that he's an extremely good leader. Okay.
Robin has a question about, was Moses' speech impediment gone by then? And, well...
Probably not.
Well, we don't really know that he had a speech impediment. When he was going back and forth with God about not wanting God to use him, what he said was, like, he's not good with words.
Right.
And so... I know some people feel like maybe he had a stutter or something, but it doesn't really say that. Actually, it also could be meaning that he just struggled to find words.
Right.
And also wasn't comfortable speaking to larger audiences. Obviously, he's a bit more comfortable now at this point because, but he's actually speaking to people one-on-one during this judgment time.
Right.
Being the judge and sort of the court and judge sort of thing. It's not, there's a lot of people around, but he's only talking to one person or two at a time, whoever that's having the dispute. Is not addressing a large audience. And so, because then God said, well, I'll have your brother Aaron, be your mouthpiece. So Moses might have had a stutter, but I don't really assume that. I just assume he felt like he would struggle, or he would have stage fright, or when he's faced with a powerful person like Pharaoh. Remember, he was like out with the sheep a lot for 40 years, and though he grew up in the palace of Pharaoh, and so he knew about the pressure of anyone who comes to speak, like culturally. He grew up in that culture where you don't approach Pharaoh, you don't speak to Pharaoh, so he knew like that would be hard for him to do. Like I'm going to freeze up because I can't do that. But so then God said, well, I'll just have Aaron be your mouthpiece, right? So all that to say, I don't know that he had a speech impediment, but I'm sure he was much more comfortable talking to people by this point in time.
Right. So keep this in mind about Jethro's character and his demeanor and how he gives advice, but watch his methodologies, and we're going to see that here in these next verses. Verse 13.
So verse 13, and it came about the next day that Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood before Moses from morning until evening.
Okay, and going on.
Verse 14, now when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, what is this thing that you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge, and all the people stand before you from morning until evening?
Okay, so he's looking at the situation. He observes the situation. Now, in order for him to know that the people stood there from morning till evening, implies that he watched from morning until evening.
He was there observing.
Verse 15.
Verse 15, Moses said to his father-in-law, because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, it comes to me, and I judge between someone and his neighbor and make known the statutes of God and his laws.
So Jethro observes. He doesn't interject. He doesn't say, well, stop. What are you doing? He waits for the day to pass. He inquires of Moses, what's going on here? Now, clearly he has a point to make, but he's gathering the information. He wants to hear it from Moses himself. Moses has an opportunity to explain. And then verse 17.
Moses' father-in-law then said to him, the thing that you are doing is not good. You will surely wear out both yourself and these people who are with you, because the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone.
Okay, so he's not condemning Moses here.
Right.
He's certainly not condemning him. He's just saying, Moses, this is an overwhelming task. You can't do this alone. Not that you can't do it, not that you're not qualified to do it.
Right.
But the burden is too heavy.
It's
You
not
need help.
sustainable.
It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. And that, and if a leader is not comfortable or self-aware or confident in their abilities, they'll like, no, I got to do it. I've got to do it. I've got to do it. And Jethro he's observing the situation, and he's instructing Moses. This is not sustainable, Moses. This is not a good thing. This is
Right.
not a good thing. Not because you're a bad judge, but because it's not sustainable.
Right. This is such a large task. The volume of work is too much for one human being
Okay. And
to sustain for much longer.
So now watch what he does. Watch this. I love this. I love this.
So verse 19, now listen to me. I will give you counsel, and God be with you. You be the people's representative before God, and you bring the disputes to God. Then admonish them about the statutes and the laws, and make known to them the way in which they are to walk and the work they are to do.
Right. You can encourage the people. Hey, God has spoken on this. You know what to do.
Maurice says, delegate, delegate,
Delegate, delegate, delegate. Absolutely.
Which is true, but we're gonna get to it here. Actually, there's some requirements
Yeah, always.
that have to be in place before the delegation.
So it's important to note that Jethro
But you're
says,
right.
God be with you. Okay. And this is significant. This will come back. This is significant here in a moment. Okay. We'll see why. But he's remind the people that they know what to do. They're bringing you their petty disputes and their things like that, but they already know what to do. They know the statutes and the laws. Now, the law hasn't necessarily been given in the Ten Commandments form yet, but the people know how God wants them to conduct themselves. Verse 21.
Furthermore, you shall select out of all the people able men who fear God, men of truth, those who hate dishonest gain, and you shall place these over them as leaders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and of tens.
Okay, did you catch that? Men who fear God first and foremost.
Able men who fear God,
who fear God,
and they are truthful, and who hate dishonest gain.
So
there's qualifications to the people that he is supposed to delegate things to. So this is a mistake that happens in some organizations and some leadership circles. This idea of delegate, but it needs to be delegate to a healthy, qualified individual.
right.
So some people go through training and they learn this idea of delegation, and they go, it also can turn into pass the buck.
Right, right.
Unhealthy delegation is like passing the buck. Like,
Right.
oh no, I took that off my plate. I gave that to Sue or John or whoever, that's on John's responsibility now. But if that person's not equipped, qualified, able to accomplish that task, now you've just sort of put something on their plate that they're not really able to accomplish. So
Robin asks, why
Yeah.
wasn't Aaron helping? And we don't know that he wasn't helping, but at this point, Moses and the leadership why weren't these able men stepping up either? Because it was Moses had been God's spokesman and had all along did all the confronting of Pharaoh and God was using him. Now God is using Jethro to enter into a new phase.
Right.
And so,
But I mean, that's a good question.
It's a good question.
But they I'm sure they were helping, because all the people had to be organized and who was next and what
Right.
the disputes were. And so they were doing some assisting, I'm sure, but they weren't trained either to do the decision making.
Right.
And this is what Jethro is saying. You train a group of leaders and then you place them as basically the appellate courts or the local
Right,
courts, you know.
right.
I mean, it really is a model for our court system today. I mean, our
Oh,
court
absolutely.
system in the U.S. comes from Scripture.
Absolutely.
And many of the terms they use actually come from the Bible. So
Absolutely.
if you go through law school, which I haven't, but
Right.
I watch a lot of shows.
Okay.
Okay, 22. Let them judge the people at all times, and let it be that they will bring to you every major matter, but they will judge every minor matter themselves. So it will be easier for you, and they will carry the burden with you.
And again, as Gay mentioned, we see this in our legal system. Of course, we have the Supreme Court of the United States, but we have I don't know the terminology, but we have different levels
Right.
of court. You're not going to go to the Supreme Court for a traffic ticket.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so-
There's district court, there's
Yeah.
superior court, there's Orange County court,
Yeah.
right? There's small claims court, right? So verse 23, if you do this thing and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all these people also will go to their places in peace.
So again, I love this about Jethro because he says, let me give you some advice. But he says, and if God so commands it too. So it's
Right.
like, but don't listen to me.
Right.
Pray about it.
So-
I mean, don't just listen to me.
Right.
Pray about
So
it.
this is not just a new believer, Jethro.
Right, right.
Why would he say that? Except for he knows himself personally that God will give and does give wisdom to us, to his believers, to his children. And so, yes, so God's using Jethro to talk to Moses about this new structure, but Jethro is saying, and pray to God about it. If God approves of this idea, then I believe it will help you,
Right.
implement it.
And as Gay said, that our founding fathers used this biblical model in setting up our judiciary system. And that's indeed a true statement. Verse 24.
So Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything that he had said.
Again, a sign of great respect and the sign that this advice was indeed sound.
But I mean, it doesn't say, but he also brought it to the Lord.
Yes, yes.
And he did everything that Jethro said because he got like approval from
Confirmation,
a confirmation
yeah.
from the Lord.
In fact, that leads us into this. A lot of people who are maybe a little hostile to the Bible have said, but in Deuteronomy, this event is recounted and there's no mention of Jethro. What happened? Well, so again, they call it the invention or the creation of the judiciary system of Israel is mentioned again, but in Deuteronomy, it says that God gave this idea to Moses, and there's no mention of Jethro. And so why? The question is why. And a lot of people who are hostile to the Bible say, the Bible contradicts itself. But no, the answer is a little more complex than that. It's that many commentators feel that, and we know historically, that in the not too distant future from this event, that the Midianites and the Israelites would sort of be in a very tenuous relationship with each other, okay, and to the point where that there would be conflict and Gideon would actually attack the Midianites,
Right.
and so there would be strife and turmoil because some of the Midianites would bring idolatry in.
Right.
And again, not a good relationship. So Deuteronomy may have put the emphasis on God rather than on Jethro, in the same way that in Genesis, because people all the time, they say, Genesis 1 and 2, they don't match. No, Genesis 1 looks at the big picture. Genesis 2 looks at the picture focusing on humanity.
Right.
So same idea.
Creation's
Right.
account focusing on humanity.
So in the research, there was an interesting aside. There is a cultural group of people. They're not Jews, they're not Muslims, they're not Christians. They're called the Druze. They identify themselves as direct descendants of Jethro. Okay, they would be what we would say modern Midianites, for lack of a better term, right? But they consider Jethro their chief prophet. It's an extremely closed group. You are born Druze. You cannot be proselytized to become a Druze. You cannot. you're born Jews, you die Jews, and very few of them actually know their sacred texts. Their texts are not open to outsiders, so not a lot is known about them. But they consider themselves direct descendants of Jethro, and some people think that they are the last remaining Midianites. Okay, but it's a very interesting aside. But verse 25.
25. Moses chose able men out of all Israel and made them heads over the people, leaders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. 26. Then they judged the people at all times. They would bring the difficult matter to Moses, but they would judge every minor matter themselves.
And this would become the judicial system that we actually still incorporate today. And it's an effective, viable, responsible form of leadership. And we see it, at least in Exodus, we see Jethro bringing this to the nation of Israel, I should say. But it's always tempered with, if this is God's will. Mm-hmm. And Deuteronomy kind of backs that up, that this is indeed God's will. God affirmed it, and he used Jethro to introduce it. But it was a system that God desired to see in his people, and because our country is based on this biblical system, it's still employed today.
Right.
And then the chapter ends with verse 27.
Then Moses said goodbye to his father-in-law, and Jethro went his way to his own land.
So after Jethro is there, and after this joyous reunion, and all that transpires, and this very, very astute observation that helped streamline, if you will, how matters were judged, mm-hmm. Then Jethro he withdraws and he goes back to his own land.
Yeah, it's interesting because one commentator, a couple that I listened to, that I didn't really agree with, but or read or listened to, but is interesting because they said, oh, Jethro, like when they kind of lose sight of the fact that it says he's a priest at the beginning. A few people, like just a leader of a family. And so like when Moses went out to greet him and how he greeted him, and they said, oh, this was a really big deal because Moses is the leader of like 2 to 3 million people right now. And Jethro's just the leader he's just a shepherd and a leader of a family, but he's the priest of Midian. Mm-hmm. So he had a bigger role mm-hmm. in that country, in that nation, than just a shepherd or just an elder guy in that town or in that country, So I thought, wow, that's interesting. One of the people, if not the person at the top. And so he's probably like, dude, this is how I do it. I mean, mm-hmm. He didn't say it like that, but, he has seen it work. Yeah. And so he's seen God use it in his situation, and so he came and shared that with Moses, and that might have happened a little bit more after Moses left, or Moses just wasn't, like, you're just overwhelmed sometimes. You're in the situation and things are happening and things are changing, and you're just like you're just trying to keep your head above water, and you're thanking God that he's helping you keep your head above water. But sometimes we do need to allow a godly person from the outside of our immediate situation to come in and give input.
Right.
I mean, it's sort of like similar to like churches and the denominations and stuff that we have. Sometimes there's, positions that open up, pastors leave, or, like superintendents change and things like that. And it's always an item of discussion of, should we get someone from the outside? And as I was studying this chapter, I was thinking, well, this is an example of God using a godly man from the outside of the situation to come in and bring wisdom and organization and health. Because now all these people that were identified as leaders and that Moses is pouring into and teaching them the word, and now they are going out and being the judges over the tens and the fifties and the hundreds and the thousands. All of those people are now serving the Lord. Yeah. And they've been empowered, they've been enlightened, and they've been empowered, and they have the word of God in their heart, and now they're teaching others. So it is the example that Jesus gave us, to go out and to disciple, go and make disciples. Mm-hmm. It's a very similar idea.
So we would encourage you to perhaps reread the chapter if in fact you're inclined towards improving leadership skills.
Yes.
And read the chapter and just glean what you can about how this interaction occurs and the wisdom and the way the two the main characters, Moses and Jethro, interact and,
Yes.
and then enjoy
Right.
this chapter. 'Cause
Yeah.
the Bible is so amazing. It just
It-
covers so many aspects
Yeah,
of our lives.
it's really amazing. So I just really, appreciate you guys logging on
Yeah.
and chatting with us. We really appreciate the comments and the questions, and we love it when you do that. We're sorry that the other platform didn't work, but praise the Lord. That's why I want to keep 3 platforms as our streaming
go.
as our streaming method, because 2 out of 3 worked. So this is good.
All right, folks.
All right, guys.
We will see you next week. We will
Have-
be here.
have
So
a blessed
great
evening.
week and blessings to each and every one of you. Thank you.
Love you. Bye.
Yes, next week. Bye.